A day in the life of a mushroom picker. So my default state is that I'm looking for mushrooms. If I find one, I move towards it, and once I get there, I pick it. Although, if anything distracts me on the way, I forget all about my mushroom and go investigate the distraction. That's the basic idea behind the state machine I'm making for my mushroom pickers. Hey guys, how's it going? It's from QC with Game Dev, and today we're going to take a look at how I made the state machine for my mushroom pickers. So in computer science terminology, the data structure I used to inform my mushroom picker's current state is called a finite state machine, or FSM, right? The basic idea here is you have a set of states and transitions leading from one state to another, right? So I'd done something similar to this in the past when I was making UI for my Go Bar game, as I needed to define a set of transitions leading from one UI to another. But I found the approach I used then was kind of messy. In particular, I'd used a dictionary to contain all my transitions from each UI and from which other UI that led to it, and it basically led to me having one massive spaghetti file full of transitions, and I wanted to not do that this time around. So one requirement I defined heading into this was that every state should be responsible for defining their own transitions and contain those transitions. So this would allow me to make much more modular states, and it would avoid me having to have one giant file with everything living in there, right? So I wound up defining a base state class that I would extend for each of my states, where the finite state machine has an active current state instance of my base state, right? So each state defines a constructor where initialization happens and is responsible for implementing an enter function where they perform any necessary startup operations. For instance, start looking for the mushroom, start looking around, that kind of thing, face where you're going, and an exit function where they perform any necessary cleanup on their way out of that state. Finally, and most importantly, they define a handle event function where they receive whichever event is collected by the container picker FSM class. This allows all the states to define inside of themselves how they will handle specific events. And this allows me to group up any similar event responses into helper functions, and allows me to really clearly define, okay, so this state is going to react in X way to Y event. It's also really easy for me to tell the picker FSM from outside of the state machine, just handle some event, and then the response will happen accordingly naturally. So notice my handle event function contains an instance of picker FSM, and this is what allows me to empower really each individual state to tell the containing finite state machine to switch to another state given the incoming event. Another important feature of my setup is that every state is responsible for defining which controllers he needs access to. So for instance, I defined a controller that allows me to affect the movement of my mushroom picker. I also made another one for where he looks. For the looking for mushroom state, I provide the looking for mushroom state constructor with my NavMesh picker mover, and I basically tell him to move to the given spot while he looks for mushrooms on the way. I also needed to tell his visual perception controller to look around for the mushrooms so that they would actually be spotted. Quickly, my constructor for my looking for mushrooms state was getting kind of bloated, so I resorted to using a services provider where I basically have a class that contains all my services that gets passed to all my states. This way, everybody has easy access to all my services through a centralized class that's easily shared among the different states. This gave me much more consistent constructor structure and allowed me to start making very fast transitions between states very easily. As an aside, in order to make the mushroom picker move, I leveraged the NavMesh workflow provided by Unity, so I basically defined a NavMesh in my scene and then set up a NavMesh agent component on my mushroom pickers, and from there, I pick positions on my NavMesh to invite the mushroom picker to try and find some mushrooms in the scene. So yeah, that's the flow I'm going to use to make my state machine for my mushroom picker. I'll keep the devlogs updated as I add new things. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.